Welcome to Season 2 of the Mexican-American War series. In the next few episodes, we will explore a decisive event in the history of the Mexican-American War, the Battle of Monterrey. In today's video, we will explore three topics: the march of the Army of Occupation from Matamoros to the town of Camargo, the unstable political situation in Mexico, and finally, the return of a Mexican character considered by many to be the only general capable of defeating the American invaders. Can you guess who he was? Before we begin, we want to take a moment to express our gratitude to each of you. Thanks to your amazing support, we've reached a milestone: 1,000 subscribers as of May 2024. Thank you again. Now, back to our story. The city of Monterrey is located approximately 150 miles or 240 kilometers south of the U.S. border. It was, and still is, a major center of communications and logistics. Securing Monterrey would give the U.S. Army a strategic foothold in northeastern Mexico. However, the task would not be easy. The Mexican army had fortified the city and would fight for it. American soldiers would later attest that nature had blessed Monterrey with a defensive position unmatched by any other 19th century city. In the summer of 1846, President James Polk grew frustrated as the Mexican government showed no interest in negotiating an end to the war, even after their defeats at Palo Alto and Resaca de la Palma back in May. Polk aimed to pressure the Mexican government into negotiations and instructed the Army of Occupation to advance into Mexico's interior to force a peace agreement. On May 17, 1846, General Mariano Arista, the Mexican commander, marched his weakened and demoralized troops to the city of Linares. This location would allow him to move his troops to either Victoria or Monterrey, depending on Taylor's future actions. As expected, when Arista arrived at Linares, he was relieved of his command by order of the Mexican president, Mariano Paredes. On May 18th, General Zachary Taylor, the commander of the U.S. Army of Occupation, ordered his troops to cross the Rio Grande and occupy the city of Matamoros, which is located on the right bank of that river, opposite present-day Brownsville, Texas. Taylor stationed his troops outside of the city to minimize frictions between his troops and the local population. At this point in time, Taylor's troops were Army regulars, that is, permanent professional soldiers. When hostilities broke in late April 1846, Zachary Taylor sent letters to the governors of Texas and Louisiana requesting militia reinforcements urgently. Additionally, when the war was declared on May 13th, the U.S. Congress voted in favor of raising 50,000 volunteers and appropriated $10 million for the conduct of the war. When news of the war with Mexico broke, a wave of patriotic fervor spread across the United States. Many men eagerly headed to recruiting stations, ready to join the local militia regiments. A few days after the occupation of Matamoros, militias from Louisiana and Texas rushed into Taylor's camp, often arriving without even basic supplies. Additionally, General Edmund Gaines, the veteran commander of the Western Division, expedited troops to support the Army of Occupation. Notably, he did this by mustering the state militia into federal service on his own initiative, bypassing presidential authority. The response to the call for volunteers was overwhelming, making it difficult for Taylor to keep track of their numbers. Within a few weeks, 8,000 volunteers had arrived in the Rio Grande Valley. Zachary Taylor now faced a logistical challenge with the sudden influx of volunteers. He didn't have enough steamboats, wagons, and rations to support and meet the needs of the new recruits. Furthermore, the irregulars lacked discipline and were not accustomed to the hardships of military life. Soon enough, problems emerged. Acts of violence, theft, and murder against the Mexican population increased exponentially. Not only that, but the volunteers also fought amongst themselves. When the regular army soldiers tried to establish order, it ended up causing more resentment and confrontations between them and the volunteers. All of this created further challenges for Taylor, as he aimed to maintain a friendly relationship with the local population. Taylor's solution was to march out the volunteers as soon as possible. He believed that moving them away from Matamoros and towards enemy forces would improve their behavior. Taylor understood that these volunteers were seeking adventure and heroism, not the hardships and boredom of camp life. By June, President Polk's hopes that Mexico would surrender did not materialize. He wanted General Taylor to potentially prepare his army to march all the way to Mexico City. Taylor informed Polk and War Secretary William L. Marcy that such an endeavor was impractical due to the vast distance and inhospitable terrain from the Rio Grande to Mexico City. The commander of the Army of Occupation suggested limiting the scope of the campaign to cutting off the northern provinces of Mexico, which Polk accepted. After receiving guidance from President Polk to advance the war further into northern Mexico, General Taylor identified Monterrey as the next objective. This city, along with Saltillo to its southwest, was crucial for controlling northeastern Mexico and gaining access to the country's interior. Taylor had also learned that the Mexican army was busy fortifying Monterrey. After the removal of Mariano Arista, General Francisco Mejia assumed command of the Army of the North. The new commander instructed his deputy to lead 1,800 troops to Cadereyta, where they camped for 2 weeks before resuming their march to Monterrey. On July 21st, Mejia moved his headquarters to Monterrey to prepare for the upcoming battle. Meanwhile, political events in Mexico City were beginning to affect the defense of Monterrey. When President Paredes took power in January 1846, he expressed support for establishing a monarchical government in Mexico, which led to strong opposition against his administration. Furthermore, the recent defeats of the Army of the North at Palo Alto and Resaca de la Palma further weakened Paredes' position, making it increasingly untenable. Despite raising taxes and seeking loans from the church, Paredes couldn't adequately fund the military. His failure to address the foreign threat and the fiscal crisis led to declining political support. As American forces advanced towards Monterrey, President Paredes decided to personally lead the Mexican army. On July 28, 1846, he stepped down and handed the presidency over to General Nicolas Bravo. Paredes, along with approximately 3,000 men, departed Mexico City. Instead of heading directly to Monterrey, he instructed his troops to march towards Guadalajara to suppress a revolt against his government. Just a few days later, on August 4th, another revolt erupted in Mexico City, led by General José Mariano Salas and supported by Santa Anna's followers. By August 6th, it was agreed that General Bravo should step down as interim president, transferring power to General Salas. This marked the end of Paredes' administration. When Paredes attempted to reclaim the presidency, he was captured and imprisoned. At the start of the Mexican-American War, Santa Anna, then exiled in La Havana, Cuba, noticed the rapid downfall of the Federalist Joaquin Herrera and the rise of the pro-war conservative Paredes regime. Seeing an opportunity, Santa Anna rebranded himself as a moderate, capable of uniting Mexico's political factions and, at the same time, presented himself as a peacemaker to the United States. Santa Anna's confidant in Washington, Alexander Atacha, conducted secret negotiations with the Americans. On February 13, 1846, Atacha met President Polk at the White House. Atacha informed President Polk that Santa Anna was willing to negotiate the sale of California and New Mexico if he regained power. Convinced of his sincerity, Polk facilitated Santa Anna's return to Mexico in August 1846. Upon his return, Santa Anna started maneuvering to regain power in Mexico. The Monterrey campaign began on June 10, 1846, when an American regiment led by Lieutenant Colonel Henry Wilson marched northwest to Reynosa, a town of about 1,000 people located 50 miles upriver from Matamoros. Since the retreat of the Army of the North, the area has been plagued by Mexican irregulars and bandits. In early June, Taylor sent McCulloch's company of Texan Rangers to scout the Linares route to Monterrey. By June 23rd, McCulloch concluded that the march from Matamoros to Linares would be impractical for a large division due to insufficient water sources. This left Taylor with only one viable option: to march along the Rio Grande towards Camargo and then head south to reach Monterrey. In the last weeks of June, the main body of the Army of Occupation began preparations to march towards Camargo, a town located about 87 miles, 140 kilometers, northwest of Matamoros. Camargo would be used as the forward base of operations for the forthcoming advance towards Monterrey. In the previous weeks, Camargo had experienced heavy rains and flooding, which damaged most of its buildings and roads. Before the war, the town had a population of about 4,000, but around half had left due to the flood. While considering his options, General Taylor encountered challenges in determining the most practical route for transporting soldiers from Matamoros to Camargo. One route involved ferrying troops on shallow draft river steamers, while the other required marching them overland parallel to the river. However, both avenues presented their own set of difficulties. The Rio Grande valleys didn't favor steam engine operations due to a shortage of timber, especially during the rainy season. The river itself became dangerous with unpredictable currents, narrow passages, and obstacles like submerged rocks and fallen trees. Opting for the overland path seemed logical, but it was scarcely better. During flood stages of the Rio Grande, many of the well-established roads became submerged, leaving soldiers to slog through muck and mud amidst soaring temperatures, high humidity, and frequent rainstorms. Given these circumstances, most infantry units were transported to Camargo via steamers, while artillery and dragoons took the overland journey. The American troops left Matamoros amidst challenging weather conditions. Almost every day, they encountered heavy showers, which were then followed by intense heat. Despite the rain, the route offered insufficient potable water. Adding to the difficulties, soldiers were constantly bothered by snakes, scorpions, and swarms of mosquitoes. The initial contingent of American soldiers reached Camargo on July 15th. Later in July, General William J. Worth arrived and assumed command of the town. He stationed the 7th Infantry in the town's plaza, while the remaining troops set up camp approximately 2 miles away along the riverbanks. As time passed, the number of U.S. soldiers in the town grew to approximately 10,000 men. However, some sources suggest that the number could have been as high as 15,000. For roughly 6 weeks, the American Army focused on preparing for the next stage of their journey. Troops engaged in training and drilling activities, while additional supplies arrived by steamboat on a daily basis. The shortage of medical staff, extreme weather, insects, and a lack of experience in maintaining sanitary conditions proved particularly deadly for the American soldiers. It's estimated that around 1,500 men lost their lives while stationed in Camargo. This number surpasses the casualties of any single battle during the Mexican-American War. As the number of deaths and men on sick call increased daily, Taylor realized that to maintain his army's fighting strength, he needed to move those able to march out of Camargo as soon as possible. On August 19th, the vanguard of the American force, consisting of around 1,600 men under General Worth, set out toward the town of Cerralvo, located about 75 miles south of Camargo and 50 miles northeast of Monterrey. This marked the beginning of the next phase of Taylor's plan, which we will cover in our next episode. With this, we conclude our video. In our upcoming episodes, we will continue narrating the dramatic events of the Battle of Monterrey. If you found the content engaging and informative, please consider giving it a thumbs up. Your likes inspire us to continue bringing you more captivating stories. Don't forget to subscribe and activate the notifications bell. By subscribing, you'll stay updated on all our upcoming content, ensuring you never miss out our future episodes.